Hey Boat Dragons, I'm so glad you joined me today. And today is going to be just a little bit of a different video. It's going to be kind of a casual conversation, but we're going to start off this video with something that you may not be expecting. Now, you're familiar with my Stein of Power, but you may not be expecting me to do this. I just dumped out all of the different book names that were listed on little pieces of paper inside my Stein of Power. And the reason I am doing that is because I'm changing things up. Okay? To give you a little bit of background, I have been on a project this year of taking my Stein of Power and pulling one book out a month that's on my physical bookshelf that I have not read. And that's been working pretty well. There were a couple of months I skipped because I had a lot of books already planned for that month. But for the most part, I've stuck to one time a month pulling a book out of the Stein of Power. I've had some misses, but overall I've had good experiences with the books I've read that way. And it gives me an opportunity to read books that I need to read because I've purchased them, right? So I should probably read them. But then one day I decided, I'm very curious to look at my Kindle and find out how many books are on my Kindle that I haven't read. And as I started that out, it didn't seem too bad. The number ticked up to 50, 100. I'm like, okay, that's pretty average. And then it hit 200, and I'm like, okay, this is getting a little out of hand. And then it hit 300, and I'm like, okay, something's got to change here. And it topped off at 314 unread books on my Kindle. Now, some of those books are series that I've DNF'd that I probably won't continue. But I did not include those in the 314 books. No, guys, those are actually books that I want to read. So I decided it was time to make some changes. I'm not going to go through all the books on my Kindle and make little pieces of paper for each of them and draw them out of the hat. That would just kind of be a time-consuming nightmare that I don't want to do. So, here's what I did. I decided to come up with reading prompts for myself. And instead of drawing a book out of the Stein of Power every month, I'm going to draw out reading prompts, and I've got them all here, and I'm gonna start cutting them out as we talk, and we'll go over some of them. Maybe I'll tell you what some of the reading prompts are, and I'm not gonna tell you every one, but you'll get to hear some of the reading prompts I've come up with, and then I'm gonna ask you for some help at the end of the video. But let me get my eyes on here, and I've got some scissors here. And we're just going to kind of talk about these, and I'm going to clear all those. Yeah, I'm making a mess on my rug, and I'll clean those up later. I promise. You guys don't need to see me clean those up, but So I've got these reading prompts here, and the reason I decided to change things up is because I want to be able to include all of my books, not just my physical books, but also books on my Kindle, which I've got right here. And, I spent money on all of those books, not only the ones on my physical shelf, but on the ones on my Kindle. And so I'm like, I really probably should branch out and start reading books that I purchased everywhere, whether it's on my shelf or on my Kindle. So every month, I'm going to pull out a reading prompt. And like for instance, on this one, I've got a book with time travel. So for that particular month, I'll have to find a book on my bookshelf or on my Kindle that involves time travel. And I have 2 stages for this, okay? The first stage is it has to be a book I own, right? So if I draw a reading prompt out, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my bookshelf, or I'm going to go to my Kindle and I'm going to find a book that fits that prompt that I've not read yet. And if I don't own a book that fits that reading prompt, then I will have to figure out a way to read a book that has been on my list to read, but that I don't own yet. I can go and find one of those books and say, okay, maybe I'll get it from the library, or I'll get a recommendation from a friend. Maybe I'll get a recommendation from one of you guys that month and say, hey, okay, I don't own this book yet, but I need to fulfill the reading prompt. So it does a couple of things for me. It helps me clear up books that I've already purchased, but if those aren't available, it helps me to read books that I've been wanting to read, but I just haven't purchased, or I've been avoiding for whatever reason. And this method also benefits me as a mood reader because it allows me to have some flexibility with what book I choose, even though I'm being forced to keep it to a certain prompt, right? So like a classic book, that would force me to read a classic, which I don't read a lot of classics, and so I kind of feel like I need to read more classics. And I do have some unread classics that I own, but it forces me to read some of those. But it gives me the opportunity to choose the one that I'm going to read that fits that prompt, so that I'm not just being forced to read a book that maybe I'm not in the mood for that month. Case in point, I did 3 books from the Stein of Power in August. And, they were just names of books. 2 of those were The Justice of Kings and The Child Thief, which I ended up temporarily DNFing, not because I necessarily didn't enjoy them, but they weren't really clicking with me that well, and maybe it was a mood thing. Maybe I wasn't in the mood to read that month. So this gives me a little bit more flexibility in terms of, being able to choose the books I'm reading, but I'm still fulfilling a prompt. So I'm still using my Stein of Power. It's using something that I purchased, because I did purchase this Stein with the purpose of reading books that I had not read yet. And, it's a nice Stein. It's nice and decorative, but I got it with a specific purpose in mind. So it may seem like I'm not really placing a high priority on books that I own on my physical shelf, and it's not that at all. I'm just placing a high priority on books that I have purchased in general and getting those read. So that's the reason I'm doing this. And, I'm just going to kind of go through as I'm cutting out some of these and tell you a few more of the prompts. I have 48 prompts here, so I'm not going to go into all of the prompts. But I figured you guys might like to see some of the prompts that I'm planning on doing. So one of those is a book by a classic fantasy author. Maybe you can see that. So that might be Lloyd Alexander. That might be books like The King of Elfland's Daughter, or one of the Canterbury Tales, or something like that. I don't know. But I do have some books that are written by classic fantasy authors, and so those would be good options for me. I've also got one that's a book by a classic sci-fi author, which I've got several of those that I have not read yet. I've got books by Isaac Asimov that I haven't read yet, like the next 2 books in the Foundation trilogy. I have not read those yet, even though I read the first book and fully intended to go back and finish the series. So you can kind of see that this gives me some flexibility to pick a book that is part of a series I've already started that I haven't finished yet. And, it's going to be really good for me, I think. One of the prompts here that I've got is a book with a king or queen. You can maybe see that there, a book with a king or queen. You know, I can probably find several books in my library that involve a king or queen. Maybe. I don't know. We shall see. And, you know, it could be that at some point I will end up rereading a book that I didn't really enjoy that much, but, you know, I'll reread it and give it a second shot. Eventually, I might add a prompt for books that I've DNF'd in the past that I maybe want to give a second try, like Perdido Street Station by China Mieville. I did not finish that book, and I was kind of disappointed that I didn't, but it really didn't click with me. It was just a little too weird for my taste. But I figured, well, maybe I'll give it another shot. Maybe my tastes will have changed. So, yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with that. But I'm not going to do DNF Redemption quite yet because my unread books I've never picked up before, are more of a high priority for me. Or possibly a book that I didn't finish, but I intended to go back to. So those are more my high priorities. I've got books with a sword on the cover, as you can see here. And there are books on my bookshelf that I need to read that have a sword on the cover. So there's books that intimidate me. I've got a prompt there for a book that intimidates you. And I've got lots of those. In fact, I did a video not too long ago talking about books that I'm intimidated by. One of those is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. I own that book on my Kindle, but it's so large. I've been intimidated by it, and I haven't read it. So this will kind of force me out of my comfort zone, even though I get to choose the books that I'm going to read for that prompt. It kind of forces me to narrow down what I'm going to read for that prompt, and so, you know, I'm going to be forced to read some larger books maybe, or I don't know. That's my goal behind this. So, and you may be bored by now watching me cut out these prompts, and oh, there went that one. So, you know, and you don't have to continue watching this if you don't want to. And you may have further questions for me too, like, you know, Chaz, what are some books that you're really excited to get to that these prompts will help you fulfill? And I think that's a really great question. Like, I've got a prompt here to read a thriller novel. And I've got several thriller novels that are in my collection that I want to read. Like, I want to finish the Hannibal Lecter series by Thomas Harris. I really enjoyed the first two books, and I want to read more from that. So it's just that I get distracted by all these other books that I want to read, and I don't get to read some of the other books that I want to read. And so this will help me. It's also going to force me to not just stick to one genre. You know, I have a preference for fantasy, but I don't always need to stick to fantasy. And I've got a lot of non-fantasy books on my list. So, like a nonfiction book even, for instance. I don't read a ton of nonfiction, but one of the prompts is to read a nonfiction book. Okay? I've got plenty that I want to read. I just have not done so yet. So you kind of see where this is going. It really broadens my spectrum as far as completing the books that I own, and it doesn't force me to stick just to my physical bookshelf. So even though that's important, it's important that I actually read any of the books that I've spent my hard-earned money on, right? Now, granted, ebooks are cheaper for the most part. If it's a really popular book that I'm wanting to read as soon as it comes out, I have spent money on some of those ebooks if I had a gift card that I needed to use, but I don't normally spend full price on ebooks. So yeah, you might say, well, you haven't spent as much money on the ebooks, Chaz. It's true, I haven't. But I still spent money, and I do want to read them. So I've got books by authors from a different country that I want to read. So that's one of the prompts on here, as you can see. or a book with 3 words in the title. So, you know, it's coming up with some of these different prompts that will force me to read more books that I might not have gotten to for a long time. But still gives me some flexibility, right? So I don't read a lot of horror, and I've got a prompt on here for a horror novel. So, or a book that might make you cry. Now, I do cry pretty easily, so, you know, I can probably easily find a book that might make me cry. But it's a new book as opposed to a book I've already read that I know will make me cry, right? And I've got lots of novellas that I need to read, and I've got a prompt for novellas here. So it will be good for me to do this, and I'm really excited about the possibilities. So I'm gonna just cut a couple of these out here while I'm asking you for help. And my ask for you guys is to send me prompts. And if it's a prompt that I don't have yet, I will add it to my list. And if it's a prompt I do have, I'll say, hey, thank you very much. I appreciate you giving me that prompt, and I already did that one, but I appreciate the thought. I appreciate your support for my channel and thinking of me when you came up with that prompt for me. So it'll be good. I really want to hear from you guys some ideas for prompts, and I really want to stay focused on books that I already own that I have not read yet. So if you're thinking of prompts, you know, we don't want them to be too out in left field just because it's probably something that I may not own yet. And as I said before, I'm willing to read books that I don't own yet if none of the books I own fit the prompt that I chose for that month. But the priority is to keep it to my own physical and ebook library that I already own. So, but yeah, hit me up in the comments below. I would love to get some ideas for you guys. And I hope this has been a nice little bit of ASMR for you guys as well. And it's just really casual. And I hope that's okay, guys. I hope you guys don't mind a more casual video from me. So I'll eventually finish tonight cutting out the rest of these prompts. But talk with me in the comments, and hit me up on Discord as well, the Dragon's Den Discord, if you want to find me there and send me a private message, or just hit me up in one of the rooms in the Discord and say, hey, Chaz, how about this reading prompt? I'd love to talk with you. I really, really would. And we have a lot of fun in that Discord, so I really do hope you'll check it out, even if it's just to join and check it out, not to talk with me about reading prompts. But let me know in the comments, too, what you think of this idea. Do you think I've gone completely bonkers? Or are you excited for this new direction for my Read What You Own project? And this isn't the official Read What You Own project. This is just my own project to read what I own. And I think that's it, guys. I'm not going to keep the video going any longer. I know you've got things to do. I appreciate you. I love you. And I will talk to you soon. Take care. And I'd like to give a huge shout out to all of my patrons. Thank you for all the support you give my channel.